What we need to do is redefine security. And security is now defined in environmental and climate and demographic terms, not in military terms. But we haven't realized that. We're still thinking of, the great wars of the last century, World War I, World War II, the Cold War. That's history now. And yet we're still appropriating resources as though we were in that world. We're in a very different world now. Well, there was a quote in Newsweek magazine a couple of years ago in an article on climate and energy, and in the first paragraph the author said, business as usual is beginning to read more and more like the end of the world. And I was surprised to see that statement in a major news magazine, though that's clearly, I think, the case. When people ask us, if you have plan B, what is plan A? And plan A is business as usual. And it's sort of interesting because when I meet people and they say, how are you? I say, I'm fine. It's the world I'm worried about. And they say, aren't we all? People are worried now about the future, and it's sort of vague. It's not a specific thing, but a growing sense of unease about where the world is headed. And I think that's what we have to respond to with Plan B and explain why we're in trouble. The bottom line is that we're facing massive change in the years ahead. And the question is whether we will be managing that change in a controlled, organized, purposeful way, or whether that change will be in response to breakdowns of more and more of the economy's natural support systems. Whether those systems be fisheries or aquifers or forests or soils, we're in some trouble now. And I think though I had long rejected the idea that food could be the weak link in our civilization, as it was in the earlier civilizations, the Sumerians and the Mayans and so forth, and I didn't think it could be for ours, but I now not only think it could be, but that it probably is the weak link. And if I were to pick one economic indicator to tell us where we're headed, it would probably be food prices. If I were to identify the near-term stresses in the world food economy, they would come more from water shortages than anything else. It looks to us at the Earth Policy Institute as though irrigated area has peaked and begun to decline in India and in the United States. These are two of the big three grain producers. China perhaps also, but it's not quite so clear. What this likely means is that world irrigated area has peaked after tripling over the last half century. Dramatic rise has now peaked and is starting to decline. What is particularly interesting about this is that the world may be experiencing peak water and peak oil at more or less the same time. Both affect food security, obviously. Peak oil affects it in two ways. One, if oil production is declining, oil prices are probably going up, and that means the production costs of food will be going up. But it also means, now that we have this enormous capacity in the United States to convert grain into oil, in effect, into fuel for cars, this means that the price of grain is now tied to the price of oil, because if the price of oil goes up, the fuel value of the grain will also go up, and if it exceeds the food value, then the market will move the grain from the food economy into the energy economy. And this is, again, an entirely new situation, and I don't think most economists yet have quite grasped this new link that exists between food prices, between grain prices and oil prices, but they are now tied together. If oil goes from $80 a barrel to $100 a barrel, the price of grain will move up. If oil goes to $150 a barrel, the price of grain will move up because you can convert grain into oil now. In the United States last year, we harvested 415 million tons of grain. Of that, 106 million tons went to ethanol distilleries to produce fuel for cars. To put that in perspective, 106 million tons exceeds the combined grain harvests of Canada and Australia, for example. So this is not a trivial amount that's being converted. It's really becoming a very substantial shift of grain from the food economy to the energy economy. I suppose part of the climate denying comes from not wanting to change. I mean, if climate is really changing, then we've got to, and we're responsible, then we've got to change ourselves, change our energy consumption patterns, restructure the energy economy, shift from fossil fuels to wind and solar and geothermal. And that takes a lot of effort and work, and most of us don't like to change. I don't particularly like to change, but I'm convinced we either have to change or we will be changed. The choice is becoming clear. And then I watched out in the countryside a powerful movement emerging over the last 2 or 3 years to oppose new coal-fired power plants. It has been an extraordinary success. We probably will never license another coal-fired power plant in the United States. Now that they've been successful on that front, they're beginning to work to close existing coal-fired power plants. And there's a list I was working on just before I left office a few days ago of at least 30, maybe 40 coal-fired power plants in the U.S. that will be closed in the next few years, replaced either with natural gas or wind farms or efficiency or what have you. But coal is finished in the United States. It's just a matter of time until we get all the plants closed down. And so we have these two very different cultures in the same country. We have the Washington bureaucratic, diplomatic culture, and we have the and the Congress, and then we have the people really doing things, and